What's going on, y'all? It's the Geek down here, back with another video, and today I'm going to be going in depth on each key Spurs player's expectations I feel they will be having heading into the season. I wanted to try something new and feel like this is an interesting way of talking about the team and what each player will provide, what's on the line for them, and if they are a part of the Spurs' future moving forward. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Starting off, we got Wemby. I think the expectation for Wemby, more than anything else, is just his development and being a lockdown on the defensive side of the court. Of course, you expect him to put up numbers to help you win, but we don't want him to lean on him too much, where it's just a Wemby show from minute 1 to 48. I think that's why we brought in veterans to help maintain the ship while he takes his breathers. I think his growth from the eye test will be him looking a little more big, so he's just not getting pushed around when he's on an island with other bigs. I think cutting back on bad shots, working on moves that can get him through defenders with finesse is something else he can refine, and overall just understanding what needs to be done so they can win as opposed to him trying to do everything. Now, when it comes to Devin Vassell, I think the expectations people have, at least I do, is him taking the next step as a scorer. Now, don't get me wrong, Vassell is one of the most versatile scorers in the league right now when it comes to how deep his shot-creating bag is. The only problem with him is his lack of shot-taking at certain points of the game, because he can go off and score 30 points in a half, but then you look at the other half, and he only had 0. And that's something I notice he struggles with. He'd be on fire in one quarter or a half, and kind of just disappear in others. And if he can focus on the pace of the game just a bit more, I think he'd become a 23, 24 points per game scorer. And that's something that's plagued the Spurs this season, because once Wemby was on the bench, the offensive side really didn't have an identity, and a part of that was Vassell didn't know when to turn it on and when he needed to, and that's really all that is with Vassell. Maybe playmaking can be a bit better, but the Spurs really predicate their offense on ball movement, and as long as he can flow with offense, I think he can really take them to another level. And speaking of taking the Spurs to another level, we can't forget about their quote-unquote big offseason acquisition in Chris Paul. Now, I'll keep it real with y'all, folks. I don't see Chris Paul doing a whole lot this season, especially with him being 39 years of age and already being a bit undersized. I just can't see him playing more than 20 to 25 minutes a game, and maybe that's all they wanted from him. The fans don't sound like it. They make it seem like he's a surefire starter, but at this point in his career, I'd much rather have Trey Jones. But regardless, I think what Paul brings to the team is a veteran leadership on the court, and that can't be replicated. And I can't stress how much the Spurs desperately needed that last year. I think that he's there to show everybody how to give Wemby the damn ball and overall help everyone flow in the offense. But I think that's what comes with his age and resume. And his injuries, I don't necessarily think they expected much from him. More or less just a coach on the court, and that's perfect for what the Spurs need. Now we're going to talk about Jeremy Sohan, and I can't stress to you how much I bank on Sohan to have a bounce-back year this season. His expectations have gone down, and I truly think that's a good thing. Last year, they had Trey Jones, Blake Wesley, and Devontae Graham at the point guards, and with all due respect, they aren't game-changing. When I heard that they were going to try to run point Sohan, I had high hopes personally, but we all know how that went. I think they just expected him to be a Ben Simmons kind of guy when he's not, right? I think Sohan falls in between a young, kind of a Sean Marion and an older Boris DL, and that's where I believe he's a great defender, a willing shooter, and a good rebounder. And I think that's what they expect from him. Kind of be a rim runner, push the tempo on fast breaks, and be the grit and grind player every team needs. I think we'll see that flourish this year, as the offensive options aren't so thin as it was last year, and he can play a lesser version of the Draymond role. The next player on this list is Stephon Castle. I love this pick, and back when I first made a video on players to draft, Castle was in the mix out of those 5 players, and I feel like he was the most Spurs-esque pick in the sense that he just fits the Spurs mold so perfectly. He plays defense, playmaking abilities there, and he came from a winning situation in UConn, and the expectations I feel he has this season alone is pure development and being a great bench piece for the majority of the season. I don't see a world where he starts, and if he does, it'll be from injuries, and that's not to take away from his playing ability, but he's damn good. But the Spurs have always took a patient route when it comes to their development in rookies. Pop even throws him in the G League, and I don't think Castle will be in the G League, but I'm just mentioning that Pop rarely throws his rookies in the fire unless the depth is thin and we got some reinforcements this season. I think either him or Reed Shepherd are the most NBA ready just when it comes to the skill sets and how they looked in Summer League. He seems to have a great knack for finishing. His shooting is a work in progress, but he's a willing shooter and his playmaking is there. I just don't know where the potential on his playmaking will be. He kind of reminds me of a young Derek White or Marcus Smart if he was a better finisher. And I think as long as the Spurs let him develop properly next to the other young core, I think the squad can have a serious upside potential defensively with the likes of Wemby, Vassell, Sohan, and Castle. Harrison Barnes. I won't spend too much time on Harrison Barnes because I think they're just going to have him play an upgraded Julian Champagnie role, and that role is just to play defense and shoot threes. Now, that's not a knock on Barnes, but when they traded for him, I knew it was mostly for a veteran presence, a respectable starter, and a three-point shooter, as he shot 38% from three and hitting 149 of them. I love Barnes back when he was on those pre-KD Warriors teams. He's always been a bucket getter, which is good since we were very slim on that aspect of the game. So I think the expectations on Barnes are low, but still vital to what this team is trying to accomplish this year. Next, we got Keldon Johnson. To me, Keldon Johnson has seemed like the odd man out on this team, and it's unfortunate because he's a hooper and he was looking like an essential piece in the Spurs' future just a few years ago. But as time goes on, he's surrounded by better players, and he seems to not fit anymore. I watched a lot of the games this year, and yeah, he had that early game winner against the Suns where he hit the shot. But I also remember watching a lot of close games where he just makes too many bad decisions and chucks up unnecessary shots. Kind of gives me like a Russell Westbrook vibe sometimes when he has the ball in his hands late in the game. And I think that's why if he's not traded this year, it's a make or break year for Keldon Johnson when it comes to his future with the Spurs. I like Keldon. If he could just play the role as a spark plug and six man off the bench, provide around 15 points and not have to be asked for a lot, I think he'd work out. And I really do think those are his expectations. Next, we got Tre Jones. And Tre Jones is an interesting player to gauge because he's not bad. And in fact, I think he was going to start over Paul when they first signed him. Just because he's at the stage in his career is better when it comes to heavy minutes, athleticism, and especially defensive ability. But when it comes to expectations, I do believe if he doesn't start, which he probably won't, he'll be a very strong backup point guard, and I think Pop will have him and Paul teach Castle everything just because of their backgrounds and sort of similar style of play. I think they also expect him to be a better three-point shooter because it's kind of hard to play point in today's NBA and not really be a respectable shooter, which he wasn't. I think that's what's holding him back from being a piece in this future. Because when you attempt 191 threes and only make 64 of them, it's just hard to trust him in certain games, like against the Bucks when he could have tied it up with a three but bricked it. And that's the problem with a lot of players on this team. We just don't get a lot of players that value the three as much as the rest of the NBA does. So hopefully Tre Jones can prove he can be a starting caliber point guard on this team moving forward. And if he's not, he'll still be a very good backup. The last of the expectations are just a group of players that I don't know how big of a role these guys will have. So Malachi Branham was someone I had high hopes for coming into last season just because he was a pure bucket getter in his rookie year, and then in his past season he regressed. So as long as he can provide shots and defense anytime he's on the floor, I will believe he'd be a much need for him. And now we got Sanju Mamu, who is someone I actually have high hopes for. I just don't know if he'd get any recognition from the Spurs because I thought he was going to walk in free agency as they didn't really make it a priority to sign him. But he showed so much promise from nobody, knowing his name to be a fan favorite in the month of April, as he basically averaged 12 and 10, getting heavy minutes and the Spurs going 4 and 3 in those games. Now my expectations are just for him to get minutes because I truly believe he can be a diamond in the rough player for the Spurs that can blossom into a key rotational piece for a Spurs playoff run. We got Zach Collins. Man, I'm just not a big fan of Collins, and I hate to sound like a hater, but I watched so many Spurs games this season where he just made me so upset sometimes, chucking up bad threes, not really defending, not rebounding well. So much rather see Bassi and Mamu and what they have to offer and bring to the table because I think Collins is who he is, and I won't badger on him too hard. I don't know if he just fits this team, but the expectations would have been to be a serviceable center depth spot, as that is something that they're still trying to figure out. The last person I wanted to talk to today about is Harrison Ingram. Do I think Harrison Ingram will get any playing time? Probably not. but I do think he can develop into a good rotational wing piece if given the opportunity. I could have talked about Blake Wesley, who was hard-nosed point of attack point guard. I just think the Spurs have way too many mouths to feed when it comes to the guard position. And with Ingram, he'd have to fight out Champagnie, and after that, I think he would be in the mix if anyone ever got hurt and be decent in those minutes. But I think if you give it time, he can really be a good wing depth spot for this team. Alright, that's all I got for today, folks. It was a bit of a different video than what I've been accustomed to, but it's something I've been wanting to make. I hope y'all like this video. If you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.